Wednesday Talks is very pleased to be back in studio once more, and this time we have Mr. Ray Holman, a legend in his own right, with us today, and we consider it a real coup to have finally gotten him in front of our cameras. Welcome, Ray. It's really good to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
There's just so much to say, and so we want to make sure by the end of this intercession here that we've had everything there is to know about you.
Okay.
I'm going to just throw it open to you and ask a general question. How did you get started in Pan, given the history of how Pan has evolved in Trinidad and Tobago?
Okay, well, I grew up in Woodbrook, and Woodbrook had it at that time. You had Invaders, that was the main band, Hit Paraders, which was I was living on Anna Street, Anna Street, Woodbrook. So you had Hit Paraders, and in the street, in the adjacent street was Green Eyes. So we had 3 bands in Woodbrook that I knew of. So I would always hear, sometimes they would come on the trace, they call it, there was a trace at the back of the house, row of houses. So they would come on the trace playing, and I would look out and see them, and I got interested in it, I said, oh, this is all right. And then when I was 13, my first contact with Pans was Little Carrot Theatre, which Beryl McBurney, you know her. So the theatre adjoined her house, and my best friend, which was her nephew, Roy Rollock, his father had been a famous musician too. So Beryl McBurney had Pans made by Ellie Manette to accompany her dance troupe. So one day we went up and we were trying to fiddle around with the Pans, and that's how I got started. We couldn't play. I remember his father said, why don't you try and play Blue Danube Waltz? So we tried to play Blue Danube Waltz, and we got the first note, that was only drum,
Yeah.
And no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't get we never got the third note, So from there we went over to Invaders, which was like a stone's throw. The little car was in Robert Street, corner of Robert Street, which was parallel to Tradwick Road as where Invaders was. So I would say it would probably be about maybe 150 yards. And I live in Robert Street too, so I was probably like about 200 yards away from Invaders. So it was kind of natural for me to go there, And when I went there, we stood outside. I went with Roy, the 2 of us were. I was 13 at the time, and we stood outside and were kind of scared to go in, because that time was rough,
What did your parents think about this?
Well, my father, my uncles, they weren't so keen on that, but my mother, she didn't say anything wrong with it, So I was kind of lucky.
Yeah.
I was always being cautioned, but that's how I went to Invaders, and that's where I learned to play.
So proximity was one of the key reasons you ended up with Invaders in those days, given their reputation at the time.
Right. Yes. That's true.
What was your experiences like with Invaders? How many years were you with the band?
Well, from say 57 and 62, I think, from 67 to 62. And but I learned so much there, because Invaders had a lot of great players at the time.
Who were some of the legendary figures in Invaders?
All right. Well, Ellie Manette he was the leader. He was the tuner, and he did some arranging too. And his brother Birdie, he was a tuner too. And they were good players. And then we had, of course, our hero was Cobo Jack. Emmanuel Riley, So he was like the soloist, and I joined what they call the States at the time, and I used to play double seconds and lead. So more tenor pan, but when Jack when he was solo, he would like me to play. He said he liked the way I used to back him.
When was the last time you seen Jack?
I saw him a couple of years ago in Trinidad. He came down south for Carnival, But he was our hero, Everybody wanted to play like Jack, and nobody really managed it.
Which hat do you prefer to wear, so to speak? Player, arranger, composer? Because you prolific composer tunes.
When I started off as player, and now I was player, then player, arranger, then composer, arranger, and then the player since maybe 1997 when I really started to play again, So right now it's, I would say it's all three. I don't know how you fit that.
And let's not forget that you also sing as well.
Yeah, I started to do that now, you know, much to my, I mean, I have to get brave, you know. I have to get brave.
Do you enjoy it?
Yes, because, and it's kind of natural to me because most of the tunes I write,
You
I
play
write
the
on
guitar, right?
So I've been doing that for so long, and when Merchant was alive and all the songs we wrote, when we finish a song, we play that for like maybe an hour and a half. I have all those tapes. I didn't discard those tapes. Yeah, you know, I have all those tapes on the songs we wrote. When we finished writing the songs, he would bring his guitar from my house, and I would have my guitar. We would sit down and play 45 minutes, finishing that tape, turn it around. So it just feels natural for me to do that.
In 1972, you were the first arranger to compose and have your selection played at Panorama 1972. What was that experience like, and what was the reception or thoughts on that from the Pan world in general at that time?
Well, the initial reception was very good. You know, it had never been done before, and Pan Trinbago, they held this meeting. So could we allow this somebody to write their own tune? It's not a calypso because somehow it's not a calypso. Why is it not a calypso? Because no calypso women sing it. But when we play Panorama, we don't play, I mean, it's instrumental music. So they held this meeting and they say, okay, it's fine for them to do it. Now, nobody had heard the tune. So in their minds, what all the bands were thinking, well, I couldn't write a good enough song. So let him do it.
It was just kind of the mood.
But so everything was fine. But when the band played in the preliminaries, we were tied with solo harmonites. You know, we had tied the year before in the finals and the preliminaries on bands. And that is when the whole uproar started. You know. Oh, it's an unfair advantage, and with case, you know. So they made me feel like I was a criminal, you know, trying to doing something wrong. But then Sparrow wrote an article about it in papers. You know, I think what happened too was that the Calypsonians were kind of scared. Well, if this were to take root, what would happen to them? You know, and that was that was unfair because the Calypsonians have their thing in the tent. You know, when you go to a tent, each tent has its own. You're not going to hear the same song in Kitchener and you're going to hear in Sparrow. They had their own thing.
Individual.
Yeah. So I was trying to have the pan be distinctive. So that was kind of rough at the outset, and for many years people still took time that, you know, they always
to kind of accept that.
Yeah, it takes time. You know, it's like people fighting for their own turf. But I knew that the idea was correct. It was only time, and then
you've been proven right.
Yeah, and so now Starlift was a powerful band in time, and all like phase 2, a lot of the players there were in Starlift. Right. So when Bugsy started, you know. When he started to do it too, but it's 2 people now.
Composing.
You know? And then when he had his own band, so it was an easier idea there because when I left Starlift, I went to Pandemonium. And we did it in Pandemonium too. But phase 2, because they had been with me, there's people there, the idea to them was a natural one, you know. And then you had a professor did some, you know, so it started to spread around, being perfect, and Robert Greenwich.
And these days it's customary.
Yeah. So really, but it was a hard.
So you're a pioneer in that field.
Yeah, but it didn't feel so good at one time.
Yeah, usually being the first of anything is
Yeah.
1964 was a special year for you. You were 20 years old and you were champion of the Steelman Music Festival. So this competition, what was that like? What kind of music did you play? From a field of how many? What was it like?
Well, it was a field, maybe about 30 odd people, because at that time it was kind of a big thing. You know, people liked, you know, pan was now coming as a solo instrument, you know. But it happened to me quite by chance that I didn't plan to enter. But I was playing at Starlift and I was arranging a test piece.
Which was
it by Lennox Spear? It might have been, you know, it's so long ago.
Okay.
It might have been Lennox Spear. And they said, well, you know, we want somebody to go up, so why don't you play? I said, okay, you know, and I started to practice. I played Tico. Practiced for 2 days, and then I went up and I made the finals. But while I played at the preliminaries, I heard this guy called Casabon. This Jules Casabon, the painter, or is he the piano player, not sure. But this was a guy he was from Laventille, you know. When I heard him play, I said, wow, this guy's great, you know. So I'm really gonna practice. He sort of inspired me to because obviously he had planned to take part in it. I didn't, you know. So he was. I think I have to thank him very much for what I eventually achieved, you know. But so I practiced, and I think, what did I play? I played Minuet in G by Beethoven, and then we had a test piece. So the test piece you had to arrange, you know. So I happened to emerge the winner, which I was very proud, you know, of that, you know. And it was something that I wouldn't forget, because being on a stage all by yourself, that was a it was a kind of daunting prospect, yeah, you know.
Indeed.
So when I got there, I was nervous, but you must be a little nervous. And then I said, look, I'm not going to look at this audience. You know. I'm just at home playing. So I was relaxed. So that's why I played well. I was relaxed. The worst thing for a performer is to think too much. You know, and I said, no, I'm not going to think about it. So that was a great experience.
You have achieved Panorama Championship titles in what's known as the golden era of Pan, when you had great luminaries, and that was a fabulous experience for you.
Yes.
And you're in the annals of Pan history. What is it in your mind, do you think, that might set you apart from other arrangers?
Well, the first thing I would say is that all the years that I arranged Panorama, that the winning of it was not foremost in my mind, even when I won. So I was always aiming to produce something that would be able to last, you know. So like for me to do a panorama tune is more, but other people seem to find it easier to do. For me it's a hard thing, because I'm always trying to make this thing perfect and to see how, you know, if it could last, people want to hear it over and over again. So I think if you look at it from that perspective, my music might stick with some other different. It would take more time to grow on you. Some other people, their music hit more instant. So you hear it the first time, it's going to grab you more than if I did it. You know, that's because we're looking at different things. So I think that is one difference. The other difference I would say is that my concept of song of the steel band is probably a little different to most people. But Clive Bradley might be closer to me. Bugsy would be closer because he was with me, and you know, some things rub off on him. But still, I was always influenced by. I always loved calypso. I love classical music. I love jazz. So it's kind of like an amalgam of all three. You know, I try to have it in proper balance. You know, like when I was when I was a teenager, I was fortunate. I lived obliquely opposite to Sidney Hill, who was he head of the government film unit, you know. So he would be playing his piano, and his daughter would play piano, and I used to hear all these classical pieces. I used to hear pieces by Gershwin, Cole Porter, all the top American composers. So I was hearing good music. And so when I started to arrange and compose, I tried to have the pan sound like an orchestra, right? Not to sound like, not for one section to be too dominant, you know, like you're just saying top, or you're just saying bottom. So I tried to have like a full sound. That also came to from when I started in Invaders. That Ellie Manette was a sort of tuner who each section was distinctive. You could tell the bass from the cello, from the guitar, from the second. So I think my education there, in addition to the types of music that I listened to, plus the fact that I took a pride in it. I wasn't doing this to win Panorama. I mean, I would like if the band did well, but my aim was to produce something that was good.
20 years from now, 40 years from now,
yeah,
we can
it
stand
still sound good, you know. So
fine.
that was my aim, and if I do it now, it would still be my aim. You know. can't change how I look at it, you know. So maybe I think I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did indeed. Doesn't sound as if you miss arranging for Panorama too much.
Well, I don't miss it yet, maybe, you know, because the last I arranged this year for Power Stars, but not much of a band, but I didn't really have too much fun really, because I like to arrange for a good band with a good song. But he had asked me, and so I did it. But I'm still around the area, so I'm always hearing, you know, going around, but I have so much to do now. That,
Such as?
I'm writing, I have so much music that I'm writing and that I'm trying to score to, you know. And this took a lot of time.
This is your CD,
Yeah.
Ray Holman and Touch,
Yeah.
came out last year.
Yes, that took a lot of time because I to write. You know, I try to do it so that you know that you could enjoy it when you could put it on and you could listen it over and over. You know.
Is there another CD coming out?
Yeah, there's one coming out now, which is about 14 Panorama songs. You know, Sanch Electronics. So it's a double album. So we're gonna have about 14 songs, and I'm gonna try and do another one. This one, let me try and get back from this one. But that will come maybe in another year and a half. But this one is gonna come at the end of this month.
The double album.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your main concern with your background in Pan, your knowledge of how things have been to Pan world since you have been a teenager? You've had a lot of years, a lot of experience to see the impact worldwide, and the good and the bad. What is your main concern when you think of everything holistically?
What I think now is that we have to training of tuners, training of arrangers, and that our young people must be more musically literate than we will. See, because the time it takes to teach a song by rote, and rote is still is important still, but I think we have to have two. We have to have two systems. Otherwise, you're going to spend so much time. So much time is lost. All right, we're doing a Panorama song. We have to practice so many hours are put into it. Right? It could be less.
If people can read
If people can read it, the arranger could have a piece and he writes out, you know, and then somebody in the band can hear it and it will move faster. See, so that is one thing that I think that we need to do, to have, not all, but at least some people be musically literate. Two, training, you know, arrangers, and there's like any other field, you must have people to teach, to pass on skills and knowledge that we have acquired. And what is the most important thing I'm seeing now is that in tuning, that our Trinidad tuners seem to be reluctant to pass on knowledge.
Yeah,
And that is not a good thing. So if somebody's tuning a pan and you come around, they're going to stop. That's, you know. So Kelly Manette was one of the few people who was always willing to teach.
We actually encountered that sometime in the very recent past, and you know, we were speaking to someone, and they were concerned as to exactly how much of, you know, what they were doing and saying would, you know, could be used. So yeah, there is that caution, you know.
So that is keeping back. So when these people pass on, what's going to happen? You see, you can't only think about now. Now is now, but there's a whole future, and we have to try and still be in the forefront. But if you don't teach your own people, what's going to happen?
Linking to that, there is supposed to be some sort of a program at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine in Trinidad. What do you know about it, and could you talk about that? What
I know about it is that it's like a degree in music, but with the emphasis on plan. And people, there are some good teachers there, but they don't have any. I think that they should make use or better use of people who have proven themselves
in the field
too, you know. So the students can have the benefit of the knowledge that these people possess. Now, they do call them from time to time, but I couldn't talk about me. I do a lecture for them maybe like once a year. And that's once a year, you know. And I don't know how many other people do it. But I think that that's it's a good idea to have a program but I think they should have more input.
One would think that. I mean, you're talking about Trinidad and Tobago, where you have a wealth of seasoned arrangers who have anything from 10 to 15 to 20 years experience in the field.
Yes.
You have tuners, you have legendary players, and so the curriculum is something that will need to be reinforced.
I think so. I think so. And with respect to the tuning, there are tuning courses. From time to time here, there's a tuning course. But who's teaching the course? Somebody who can't tune themselves properly, you know. So if you can't do it, how are you going to teach somebody? So the person is holding back the whole development, you know. This is a serious thing. But the tuners are insecure, so they worry that if they teach somebody else, they're going to lose partner. I mean, you're going to lose. You know, there's so many. You know, the demand for the instrument is so great. You know, that the more we promote it and the more people get to know about it, it's better for everybody. It's better for everybody in Trinidad.
You mentioned that your influences were jazz, classical, and calypso.
Yeah.
And you mentioned people like Cole Porter.
I heard all those Gershwin.
Right. So the key people who you really listened to then, and who do you listen to now?
No. I can't say anybody in particular now. I put on a radio. I put on the jazz channel. If I put on to a classical channel, I would listen to. Sometimes I would like to hear like the 70s music. You know, I understand it. You know, I like blues too. So I listen to.
Anything that influences.
Yeah. I just like nice. I just like good music. I don't listen to much like rock, like hard rock. I never really had an ear for that. But I like to hear good music that has some melody to it, like African music. I play a lot of African musicians. They're from Ghana, mainly Ghana and Nigeria. You know? And so I'm influenced by that.
What do you think of Panorama? Do you consider it a curse or a blessing?
Well, it was a blessing for a long time because you see, when Panorama started, what we did, we played calypsos on the road. We had like a competition, best beating band on the road. I used to win first out of it, and we used to win it a lot. But music was nice, but it was rudimentary. When Panorama came in 1960, was it 63? Am I right? Yeah, I think so. I didn't know what to do. The only person who had an idea then was Anthony Williams. He was the leader of Junior Pan and All Stars. So he had the first, he had the first idea of what could be done with a calypso. We knew it was the first chorus and he had a little jam, back to the verse and chorus. But he came with an introduction. And
so could we think of Anthony Williamson as the first arranger of Panorama selections as we know it?
I think I would say no, not as we know it. But he took it. He made the first step.
First step into what we know.
Into what we know today. The first step. So that was 63, and I think 1966 when I did Mass and South. I think that is the form that that's the basis of the form that's being written now. In that an introduction, and then we had. I looked at it because I was listening to classical music. I looked at it as a theme and variation, maybe like a concerto form, a mini concerto form. So like intro, theme, and then variation, theme, and then modulation. You know, like changing keys and doing it very cleverly, not just like a half step. And I used to work hard at that. I think Mass and South was the paradigm. Because, and then I did I used three different keys, and then it reverted to the original key. So that became the form. So if you go to a panel now, you might hear, so how far you change? Well, we need third key now. but that's going to change again because they have put a restriction on time. So it's going to be difficult now to do that. I'm not saying it's necessary to have 3 keys. I'm just saying that that's how we formed it.
Yeah, it's been accepted or default.
So Tony Williams was the first to do. He took the first step, and then I took it, and then that's how the form is. And what else should I say? It was important for us to have Panorama. Just like it was important to have the music festival to afford us the opportunity to play music to play good music, serious music,
and to elevate the standard.
And to elevate the standard, and to have discipline in playing and so on. But what became unfortunate about Panorama, and even with the festival, I'm always advocating, why must we always have it as a company? I'm always asking this question. So why can't we have like a festival of music too, where you're free to play whatever you want to play? You can play classical music, jazz, whatever you want. But we don't really have to always have a judge, because what has happened to Pan and to Panorama, what the Panorama has done, is that nobody wants to come and hear Pan or steel band perform like it's not a competition. And so a lot of Pan men don't want to play, they only want to play Panorama. So after Panorama, that's it. The band was 120, 125, whatever it was, and after this one, so people are not interested in playing because there's no longer that drive. So what was driving them is the competitive aspect of it. And we've lost a lot of jobs. I remember when I was in Starlet, we used to be playing our Panorama tune in parties, so because the band had jobs. But then, if you're only learning 1 or 2 tunes, how are you going to have a job? They can't hire a steel band to play 2 tunes. So, and I was saying this then, we got to be careful not to let this thing become the sole focus of the movement. And then the music too, after a while, started to suffer because a lot of the judges were incompetent and still are. So they point the bands in a certain direction, and like you must do this, and it's like they have a preconceived idea. And then there has been the format they have now for judging Panorama. Sometimes you really can't be, when I think about it, could you bring the judges for the format? It pins it down, so you must do this. So you listen to all the tunes. I didn't hear any tunes that they had here for. If you take the tapes, I can tell you what they're going to be like, because they have the arrangers in a box. You must do this. So they must.
So the judges themselves can't think out of the box.
No. The whole thing that you see now, when the idea of the format was to guide, say that okay, well, this is what you would look for generally, but rather it has become now that this is the way to do it.
If you don't fit that mold, you're out, regardless of how good or bad or different you. So, in other words, variation can be your undoing.
Right. So it's like formula music. It has become that.
It's interesting you say that, because a couple of the arrangers, at least in Trinidad, their attitude is if you do what the judges want, you win. And apparently it has worked for, they've outright said in our interviews that do what the judges want, you win, and it does work, apparently.
So you see, so it comes down now to, why are we playing music?
Why are you going to competition when you're just, it's not even for an elevating.
It's not elevating anything. So you as an artist now, God gave you a talent. So what you do with this talent? What you did with it?
It's stifling, I suppose.
I played music, so somebody would say, okay, I'll give you 97. Because you did that, well, I mean, if you feel that's what makes you feel good, fine. That doesn't make me feel good.
It's interesting you mentioned the incompetency of judges, because it seems as if both in New York and in Trinidad, the Pan world, they have voiced serious concerns in varying things. And I had interviewed at least 3 people for the 2004 Trinidad Panorama, and 3 different people went on the record, and the interviews are up on our site, stating that they had the experience of judges speaking to them after the preliminaries or the semifinals, just saying, oh, hi, and this is the arrangers, hi, how are you going, XYZ. And we really enjoyed the cello work or the double tenor work, and I'm just calling regular plans. But the point I'm going to make is that those 3 arrangers said they did not have those particular pans in the orchestra. And these are the people who were judging them. So that was mind-blowing for a lot of people to hear that you're judging this and you're identifying pans that aren't there. So then you're judging, your criteria for judging. So I suppose that's really an issue.
I had advice from people years ago. Somebody wants to be a judge for Panorama, let them submit a CV. What have you done? So okay, so we know that this person has achieved something, they have done something. Because I judged that. I was an adjudicator for school steel band festival. That's maybe like about 10 years ago. I went to Grenada too. And I was shocked. Some of the people, and they don't know. It was amazing. That was a revelation to me, And I think that it is unfair to the arrangers that they want to produce something. They shouldn't have somebody there who is below their level, or somebody who, not because you have a degree in music means you're a good musician. See, and a lot of people confuse that. Somebody has a music degree, okay, so they can read music, and they can play a piece with a piano, whatever it is. That doesn't mean that they are good musicians. Mm-hmm. So we always make a mistake. Because this person has a read, so let them judge. No. No. And that has been a big problem. And some people say, okay, well, we go along with what they say. Okay, so you go along with it. But when you look back, when you get all those tapes, and in time, you look back and you see, well, what's this? This is what our music was, and that is my biggest fear. Is that, and it's not fear. It's not helping them to develop. It's not helping people to become better musicians, better arrangers, better composers, and it should be, But one, I'm glad that they have cut the time down, so at least the tunes could be played in the future. What I'm doing, I'm trying to cut some. I'm in a process of editing. But most of the songs are scored, but I want to have like abridged versions, because if you have concerts of them, it's half a 10-minute pieces. It's kind of long, So that is another thing to what Panorama. I think it's good now that it's shorter. It's a bit long.
It's interesting.
I don't know if anybody else has voiced that.
Yeah, we've had a couple of people who've indeed said that, and they have more or less thought about it in the sense that there are many arrangers who cannot arrange for 10 minutes. That was the main reason why it was voiced, because they said basically there are few people who can arrange for 10 minutes with variation and do it competently. And so from that viewpoint alone, yes, quite a few people have agreed with that. Also, some of the arrangers that I've spoken to have said that they find that the judges who are adjudicating them should be people who themselves, at any given point in time, can arrange if it was a 10-minute Panorama piece, because in other words, how can they, as you were saying, not be adjudicated by people who are at least their peers? Because one of their complaints, and again, the interviews are on our site, was that you asked the judges if they could arrange a Panorama piece at any given point, and I think maybe with the exception of one person who I'll not mention, most of them may not have that ability. Don't know if they have tried it, but nobody seems to know that the judges themselves are capable of doing what they are judging themselves, and that seems to be a theme.
Yes,
concern to the
it is a legitimate concern that how is the music going to improve, or how are we going to get people to play music, or quote unquote good music, or better music than we've been having, if they've been guided by people who can't do themselves, or who don't have an idea what's being done, or it's a tragedy, It really is a tragedy, and what happens, and I think I want to say it because I just want to say the truth, that a lot of people like the idea of being a judge. It gives them a lot of social status, So I'm a judge for Panorama. He's a judge for Panorama. And it's something nice, So some people are not being honest enough.
Too sure.
They're not being honest, but they should be honest and say, look, I don't think I could do this. So I think that the format, which was well intended, but it's keeping
the evolutionary process.
Yes, yeah. Let it be freer. I mean, music has certain guidelines and rules, But so every piece The arranger's gonna sing, gonna play, and then every band's gonna have a minor. So because they talk about harmonic, what's it? It means the reharmonization. That's not the only way to reharmonize something. But so when you do that, so you just, oh yes, but he played a minor. So that's a big thing. So I mean, it's kind of silly, you know. So it's really it's silly, and it makes the arrangers act silly too. They're only reacting to the guidance they're getting because it's a means of livelihood. So if you win, that means everybody wants you, and you could command a higher and so on. Yeah. So that's what it's like. That's come to. Yeah. I'm not saying people shouldn't want to win. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is music should be better directed by people who know better. It shouldn't be directed by people who shouldn't. The blind can't lead the sighted. I mean, that's the best I could say. I can't put it any better than that.
Well, you said a lot in terms of, your experiences with Pan. In a nutshell, what do you see as the future of Pan?
The future could be anything. I'm only seeing Pan becoming more popular. More and more people are interested in it. And I have to thank you all for what you're doing, because things like this really, people are in touch with you from all over the world.
Well,
see,
this is a global audience.
Yes, so this is what you want. I'm seeing that Pan, I don't know in my life should it be mainstream, but I'm seeing so many more schools, so many more young people all over the world taking up the instrument. And I see a bright future for it. So that's why I'm stressing again that our people must be prepared to take advantage of when your boom comes.
Talking about taking advantage, I'm actually going to go back a few years. In the 1970s, there was a hydroform process developed in Trinidad, started by a Mr. Dennis, I believe, who was in England. He was at UE at the time, and he started this process in terms of pressing pans, and there were some kinks that worked it out. At some point, you were the person that they came to, and you were the sounding board, or the test person for the pan, and it seemed to have had a favorable response at that time.
It had a favorable response.
And it could be, do you think you can call it maybe the forerunner in some ways of this hydro steel? Is there a similarity in the processes at all?
No.
Okay.
No. What they were trying to do was to speed up the process of producing an instrument. So if you had a pan being sung by a machine, it means that they would take all this hard labor out of it. And it worked, but then some tuners were complaining about the quality of the drums, or maybe every tuner has different measurements, depending on how, if you want your pan to be very warm, you can't sink it very deep. If you sink it like a funnel leap, it's going to be very metallic and soft. Right? So I think some tuners had a concern about the standardization of the process. So I think it sort of it faded out after a while.
In 1976, there was a full set of pans. Yeah. Was it a full orchestra that was produced?
Well, yeah. They had a lot of instruments that were given to different tuners. They were not. I don't think that they were all in one band.
Okay.
They were, I think.
What was your thought on the finished product?
I thought they were okay. Those actually were okay, and they weren't perfect, but they were okay. And if it had continued, well, obviously they would have. When you do it, you get better, and then they would throw the errors or later. But this is what you mentioned there about this process in Delaware. I heard one of the drums for the first time this year in Virginia Beach. I was okay, I don't think it's anything that will take the place
of the process as it is now, which is.
I don't think so. It's stainless steel, and I had a reason for doing that, but I'm not seeing that it's gonna So far.
Wouldn't be panned by, Hydro Steel panned by storm.
I don't think so, no, it doesn't seem so to me.
So, to go back to the Hydroform, issue, funding apparently was stopped in 1976, or thereabouts, or soon thereafter, 77. Considering if they had continued, I mean, Trinidad and Tobago is, quote-unquote, the home of Pan. If they had continued as you're thinking, it would have been surely 26 years later.
I think so.
Things would have been
much
perfected.
further on.
Do you know where, well, why is probably anybody's guess. If you have a reason, yes. If you know why, yes.
I'm not sure why.
Okay.
What I could say is that somehow anything to do with the steel band always seems to get mixed up in politics. Or you kind of attempt to get political mileage out of it, or use it, or leverage, And I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But I know that it has to do with a lot of things.
Okay.
So the steel band was always, and still is, subject to this, Even in the movement itself, it's always politics, and I suppose once people want power,
Whatever tools.
Yeah, people will use. So, so the movement has always been subject to political football, and this is unfortunate.
So do you know where that original press is? Because there was a large one that was turning out, that was manufacturing. Do you know where? What part of Trinidad it is at the moment?
I don't know what happened to the UW. I think eventually when I realized that there's no, I gave it up, And then.
But a printing,
there was
not a printing, but a press.
A press was
does not disappear.
I don't know where it is,
You know what I'm saying? It was made in the machinery, the machine shop of Caroni Limited, I believe. So you're talking about a large bit of machinery.
Yes.
Nobody knows where it is.
Nobody knows where it is.
It's interesting.
Things disappear.
That's not good.
No. Well,
Because
I have to do some research.
Oh, please! It would be most interesting to know where this Hydroform press,
because
large scale.
Kariri had something to do with it,
Yeah, they would do research.
And then they tried to revise something with the university. Spoke to me maybe about a few years ago. They were trying to revive research. The problem is always funding.
Right.
See, you have you have to invest. And if you want it to go forward, you have to invest money into it.
It's true of any venture.
Yes. So if you don't put capital investment into it, what are you going to get back?
Well, if you happen to find out where that press is, we're real interested in knowing where this Hydroform press is.
I'll make some
because it's like, you don't just pick up a car and it disappears.
No.
There's always somebody to move it somewhere else. Do you know where any of the instruments are? I know it's been a number of years.
They were dispersed then.
Okay.
I don't know. That was so long.
Okay. Ray, it's been really great to have you in the studios of WST Steel Talks. As I said before, as I opened, you're one of the legends, and we know a lot about you, but nothing compared to what you've shared with us and with the global Pan community. It's great to have your insight, your experiences. It's really been good to have you here. Thank you very much for coming to the studios of WST Steel Talks. Best of luck in your double album that's going to be released on the 14th, you say?
Sometime towards the end of October.
Toward the end of October, and then again you have another CD coming sometime. And thank you very much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.